And welcome to the Northeast ASEAN Multi-Stakeholder Forum on Sustainable Development Goals, Turning the Pandemic Crisis into Collective SDG Actions. Today is the 4th of November, and we will be, the sessions today are sessions 3, 4, and 5. Really happy to have all of you here. As participants are arriving, please allow me to go over some technical guidelines for today's 3 sessions. The meeting will be recorded. It's currently being broadcasted on YouTube as we speak. So you'll be able to access the conversations from today on YouTube afterwards, or even now if you wanted to. So greetings to our participants who are joining us through YouTube as well. We really encourage you to write the questions that you have for our panelists into the Q&A window, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. PowerPoint slides will be made available after the session, and we really do invite you to write comments and inputs and continue discussions with each other in the chat. There will be opportunities during the Q&A sessions for you to intervene if you would like. So if you do want to step in and say something, please use the raise hand function on Zoom to let us know, and then we will be in touch with you about giving you microphone and camera access. And if you don't want to raise your hand, you're also welcome to let us know in the chat directly. And with that, I'm really happy to pass the microphone over to the SCAP Secretariat for some opening remarks. Over to you.
Thank you, Irene. Good afternoon, good morning. We are now starting session 3, SDG in Action, sharing experiences of multi-stakeholder engagement for sharing goals and response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I would like to hand over this to Mr. Tae-Kyun Kim, Associate Dean for Academic Affairs and Professor of International Development, Graduate School of International Studies of Seoul National University. He is also a member of the KOICA Board of Directors. Professor Kim, over to you.
Thank you, Nobuko, for the nice introduction. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tae-Kyun Kim. I'm the Associate Dean for the Graduate School of International Studies of National University in Seoul, Korea. I'm quite honored to moderate this important session 3, SDG in Action, sharing experiences of multi-stakeholders engagement for shared goals and response to COVID-19 pandemic. I also thank UNESCO for organizing this wonderful virtual gathering in order to discuss how we enhance multi-stakeholder engagement to handle this current pandemic. So actually, the novel coronavirus pandemic has underscored the importance of enhancing global collaboration and also the effective partnership among all sectors and stakeholders while building back better together. So that's why the today topic for session 3 is quite critical. to understand and then the build up the another effort to handle COVID-19 through the multi-stakeholderism. So today's societies are highly interconnected, as you know, and we are all part of the one global interdependent system. I think the world is sharing of ideas, information, knowledge, and movement of people and goods are very truly boundless. So this interconnectedness is also a basis for our global economy, as well as for our today topic. So the health of all parts is very crucial. So in that context, I will introduce three speakers. They're all the rapporteurs last week. So actually the three theme-based discussion sessions were organized last week as pre-session of this forum. I will introduce one by one. The first one, the pre-session for one, protecting people and reducing inequalities, will be today covered by Ms. Angma Ang Bort, Executive Director, LGBT Center in Mongolia. And the second session, the pre-session two, the Building Inclusive and Resilient Society, will be covered by the Professor Yasushi Katsuma, International Studies Program, Grade School of Asia Pacific Studies, GSAPS, Waseda University in Japan. And then the last pre-session three, the Promoting Sustainable and Green Recovery, will be covered by Ms. Yingjie Chen, Program Officer, Green Innovation Hub. So without further ado, I will invite the first speaker to talk about the pre-session one, protecting people and reducing inequalities. So I will give mic to the Ms. Angma and Ang Bort.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Professor. So I'm just going to share the slide with you all. Yes, I hope. Okay, so as mentioned, the first pre-session was on protecting people and reducing inequalities. It was held on October 27th, moderated by Nobuka Kajiura, Sustainable Development Officer at ESCAP Northeast Asia. And as you can see, the focus on this session is protecting people and reducing inequality. All SDGs are interrelated. Special focus will be given to goals 1, 2, 3, 8, 10, and 16, which is actually among the 9 goals that is to be reviewed in depth in the high-level political forum that will take place in 2021. But also we added goals 4 and 5, which is specifically related to our submission. So the key speakers at the pre-session 1 were Alfred Choi from Hong Kong, and Feng Yuan, co-founder of Beijing Equality from China, and Gerald of Dort, president of the National Federation of the Blind in Mongolia. So the key questions in this pre-session was, who is the target group, what challenges they are facing, what is the initiative actions and who is involved, how does it help the target group, and outputs and challenges, and any recommendations to stakeholders. And highlighted issues and vulnerable groups discussed in this pre-session were from Hong Kong, street cleaners, visually impaired people, low-income people, ethnic minorities. China highlighted on domestic violence and gender-based violence. In Mongolia, people with disabilities, especially visually impaired people. And some of the common issues were discriminatory emergency measures by the government, limited access to information, to essential needs, to education, increase in unemployment, and new poor was created, and increase in domestic violence and gender-based violence. So the first presenter, Mr. Choi from Hong Kong, Mr. Choi remarked that COVID-19 has left much of humanity willing, especially poor communities that have a lack of resources, to be frightened. Oxfam quickly came out with responses with different stakeholders, such as PEN organizations, donors, supporters, volunteers, and has been urging the government to introduce policies to support the poorest. Oxfam launched its response during the initial outbreak in early February. With continued spread of coronavirus, Oxfam targeted these groups of people. So street cleaners are the front line of employees to keep public hygiene in check, but they lacked the basic protective equipment, and they had to reuse the face masks. And Mr. Choi emphasized that at the time, the price of face masks was very high. Cost of one face mask was several US dollars, and then it was hard for street cleaners to afford. And when it comes to visually impaired people, their sense of touch is crucial. And with the shortage of disinfectant, they are at greater risk of catching the virus. And low-income families, limited supplies of masks and disinfectant, price of these items and other necessities were soaring. And when it comes to ethnic minorities, language barriers was the key challenge, because they were unable to access the information about COVID-19 and have on prevention and what COVID-19 in their own language. Some of the initiatives Oxfam had were direct aid, distributing masks, hand sanitizers, and rice, promoting anti-epidemic information, and some policy intervention. Oxfam carried out some research to specify the impact of COVID-19 on the poor. One of the surveys showed that unemployment among low-income families has drastically increased 400 times since Chinese New Year in February. And Oxfam has been calling on the government to introduce some measures, such as support unemployment and system measures to consult and the unemployed workers. One interesting thing they were also, Oxfam is advocating is vaccine. Once safe vaccines are developed, urge the government to ensure that all vulnerable groups have free access to it. I believe this is an advocacy that is going on. As of May 2020, Oxfam has reached over 30,000 people, distributing 238,000 face masks, 76,000 bottles of hand sanitizers, and 12 tons of rice to nearly 3,800 poor families and marginalized groups. So some of the challenges were COVID-19 in China and US trade war leads to economic downturn, increased unemployment, this has an impact on the current labor and social security system. So that was it for Mr. Choi. The next presenter, Feng Young, on achieving SDG, stopping rising violence against women during the COVID-19. Ms. Feng laid out the current situation on domestic violence in China compared to domestic violence in China before the pandemic. So as you can see, the current situation, domestic violence has remarkably increased during the COVID-19 pandemic. Police in 2 counties in Hubei province received up to 3 times as many inquiries and reports from domestic violence victims in January and February 2020 as to 2019. However, there was some good in it. More media attention to domestic violence have generated great public attention and discussion and created a momentum to urge further implementation of China's national anti-domestic violence law, which came into effect in March 2016. Ms. Feng also introduced an online survey conducted quite recently among over 13,000 people. And this showed that higher prevalence of verbal insults and financial control and sexual harassment was under COVID-19. Most of the respondents were women, trans, and intersex people, and 1/3 of the respondents experienced some form of violence. And this survey also showed that most violence occurred in digital space and at home under COVID-19, especially to women. Violence were committed by strangers, mostly on the internet by strangers, and immediate violence took place at home. And also some challenges and limitations. Ms. Fang mentioned some useful domestic violence mechanisms are idling, such as protection order and written warnings, because people were unable to access these laws. Due to lockdown measures, citizens' mobility was restricted. This creates a new form of problem and gives more opportunities for domestic violence and gender-based violence to occur. The lockdown made it difficult for victims of domestic violence to seek support and help. In a way, COVID-19 worsened the existing problem and gave the excuse to ignore gender-based violence. And Ms. Young provided some recommendations to different stakeholders. Basically, do more on gender-based violence, speed up towards sustainable development goals. And to UN system, be more proactive, continue to engage with NGOs. To the state and governments, further refine laws and policies, escalate good practice, training of officials, accountability, collect data, make it accessible, and make NGO-friendly policies. To civil society organizations, continue to improve capabilities of service, public education, advocacy, as well as cooperation with cooperation and solidarity. To academics, more empirical research with right-based approaches, curriculum development in high learning institutes. To employers, cognizant gender-based violence affects the workplace negatively, and provisions to related law on their duty. Okay, so that was for Ms. Feng from China. And moving on to presenter 3, Ms. Gürel Donderdort from Mongolia on COVID-19 impacts and challenges on the person with disability. Also, Ms. Donderdort provided the current situation. So under the COVID-19 pandemic, currently there is no locally transmitted cases. However, there are around 340 cases under quarantine. Among them, there are no people with disability and no death. Between February and August, Mongolian government took some emergency measures in regards to COVID-19 pandemic, such as schools were closed, public gathering was prohibited, and all borders were closed, as well as face masks and hygiene materials were enforced. However, these measures have negative impacts on people with disability. So Mongolian National Federation of the Blind conducted some research during this pandemic to find out issues and problems faced by people with disability and their families. And they found out that limited access on information disseminated to the public by the government related to COVID were not accessible to visually and hearing impaired people. However, there was one good practice that was some TV stations broadcasted information on COVID-19 with sign language. Another good practice was small NGOs like the National Federation made information accessible to visually impaired people. During school lockdown, classes were conducted online, broadcasted on national TV stations. These classes were not accessible to visually or hearing impaired students. And some parents, during the interview conducted with some students' parents, even the parents try to teach their children, they lack the methodology. And then especially for visually impaired university students, it was very challenging because they didn't have access to their courses online, yes. Face mask and hygiene supplies are extra costs, and due to lack of income, families with disability have challenges to buy protective materials for their daily lives, and income had decreased during the pandemic. Many businesses were required to close their businesses, especially the massage centers were significant to visually impaired people because many visually impaired people work in the massage centers. And
sorry to interrupt. So you have, I think, 2 minutes to the maximum.
Okay, thank you very much. So also another challenge what Ms. Dondergaard shared was a shortage of medicine. So children and people with disability who are on a prescription medicine couldn't access their medication because the border was closed. So Ms. Dondergaard provided several recommendations, but I'm going to highlight 3 of them. I'm just going to read it from here. So the recommendations to the Mongolian government to ensure that disability inclusive COVID-19 emergency measures and on the implementation of the National Sustainable Development Goals, which was approved in May 2020. There is a significance, she emphasized on the significance of the Vision 2050 because the previous vision was not inclusive of people with disability. However, through their advocacy, 2050 vision now has about 29 times 29 times disability-related issues were reflected in the national SDG. So the recommendations are, first, have a good knowledge of the Sustainable Development Goals. By doing so, the government can continue to advocate to ensure the effective implementation and educate the people with disability on Sustainable Development Goals. Second, improve the collaboration with stakeholders to ensure the effective implementation of the SDG and learn from other countries and the good experiences on ensuring the effective implementation of the SDG. So that is it so far for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for the nice, the wrap up about the pre-session 1. So we can now understand some of the marginalized groups, especially impact by the COVID-19. So I think the 3 countries report we now they're having, so China, Hong Kong, the Mongolia. So thank you again to Ms. Angbort. And then we're going to move on the second presentation about the pre-session 2, the building inclusive and resilient society. So we will invite the Professor Yasushi Katsuma. So Professor Katsuma, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Professor Kim. Let me summarize the discussion that took place on October 28th in the pre-session on building inclusive and resilient societies. Okay. Okay. And in the session, there were 4 presentations. Mr. Felix Wedenkopf from ILO spoke on employment. Mr. Masaki Inaba from Japan Civil Society Network on SDGs made a presentation on governance and digitalization. And Ms. Serenkov Videria from Mongolian CSO's network on SDGs talked about promoting inclusive and resilient society in Mongolia. Ms. Natalia Radoman from Russian NGO, the School Meals Movement, talked about school meals improvement. And the session was moderated Mr. Sangmin Nam, Deputy Head of SCAP East and Northeast Asia Office. There were 4 issues and topics discussed: youth employment in Asia Pacific. Number 2, governance on digitalization. Number 3, COVID-19 impact on Mongolia. Number 4, improving school meals. First, we try to identify vulnerable groups or issues and the current measures and initiatives that are taking place. First, on the topic of youth employment in Asia Pacific, the COVID-19 crisis negatively impacts particularly young people through job disruptions and disruptions in education training and difficulties in transitioning from school to work. ILO study found young workers are more likely to be employed in hard-hit sectors by COVID-19, such as wholesale and retail trade, manufacturing, real estate, accommodation, and food service activities. Young women are particularly vulnerable due to uneven distribution of unpaid household and care work. Job disruption with COVID-19 and technological advancement, increasing demand for higher skilled workers, can further widen the inequality. Various models of support for youth employment across the region are found, such as subsidy to reduce the cost of hiring. The second topic, governance and digitization, SDG Goal 16 and digitization, we find contradictions between democracy and digital transformation governance. While digital transformation is ongoing at global level, democratic governance systems have not gone beyond the nation state. Civil society of the group of 20 countries identified key concerns such as privacy issues, consumers' rights, labor rights. Also, environmental concerns because of the high consumption of mineral resources for digitalization was discussed. At the Group of 20 meeting in 2019, Digital Economy Working Group identified key areas of challenges, highlighting the lack of democratic governance. Civil society groups initiated by Asian People's Exchange developed a comprehensive framework on appropriate technology choice for sustainable development to advocate for SDG-aligned technology choice. Let me turn to the third topic, the COVID-19 impact in Mongolia. Decline in business sales, disruption of supply chains due to border closures, shorter work hours or unpaid leave, an increase in food prices, including meat, flour, and dairy products. They all affect vulnerable households. Self-employed and agriculture households suffer due to disruption in logistics and falling livestock product trading. Also, in Mongolia, it was reported that domestic violence is increasing due to psychological stress. Digital divide in education is also a problem. Poor and rural households are less likely to have access to online education materials. The government has been trying to increase social protection benefits through food voucher, money for child education, and also to enterprises by exempting income tax and also social insurance premium payment during the period of quarantine. Civil society is also working actively to promote community participation, localization of the SDGs, community level training on how to create a cash saving group. Let me turn to the fourth topic, improving school meals. In Russia, many students do not like free school meals, creating a food waste problem. The movement started with parents concerned about quality of school meals, now developed a large network across the country. Requesting to change the school menu involves dialogues with the school authority, local authority, and the business sector. Let me try to summarize the challenges we identified in those 4 areas. In youth employment, with job polarization amid technological advancements, entry-level jobs by young people have a greater proportion of automatable tasks. So even before COVID-19's impact, because of the technology advancement and innovation, I think there has been a mismatch between the labor force and the market demand for labor. On governance of digitization, there has been areas of challenges, rights issues, social concerns, environmental concerns, equity issues, and governance. To build an inclusive and resilient society, civil society organizations are to support government to implement the SDGs. To do so, civil society organizations face challenges in building capacity of their own and experiences, strengthening governance system in social service delivery. Also, financial support to enhance sustainable monitoring and evaluation is necessary for CSOs. Recommendations: increase employment among young people. Prioritize support measures can include youth-targeted wage subsidies and public employment programs. Digital inclusion for equitable access to education, training, and employment. Access to capital combined with non-financial services for young entrepreneurs will be necessary. Next, large-scale and targeted measures to increase youth employment and to support education to employment transition. Many young people in schools now are struggling after the graduation to get a job. However, due to the current situation, it is very difficult. So the transition from school to employment is an important task. Also, cross-cutting policy recommendation is that to reach the most vulnerable young people. Improve governance on digitization, adapt principles and guidelines to protect the rights, develop a comprehensive framework on appropriate technological choice for sustainable development. Transboundary nature of digital economy requires global governance mechanism. Civil society organizations need to raise more voices about technological innovation to develop a sustainable society. We need to build a resilient society. Priority action to build an inclusive and resilient society is necessary. Maintain financial prudence, support small and medium enterprises, strengthen governance system, mobilize the whole of society action. We need to protect vulnerable groups. We identified migrant workers are very vulnerable, often being excluded from social protection mechanism. Food security is an issue for vulnerable households because of the border closure affect food supply of vulnerable households. Digital divide leave children without access to online education behind. Increase in domestic violence, increase in domestic violence, especially for women and children, is a big issue. Victims of COVID-19 are often blamed, so they should be considered as not to be blamed, but they are the survivors to bring change to the society. Thank you very much for your attention. That was the report from the group 2.
Oh yeah, we really appreciate Professor Katsuma. Here's a wonderful summary of the issues raised and the discussions held at the pre-session last week. The building inclusive and resilient society. I think that there are 4 major issues raised: youth employment in Asia Pacific, and governance and digitization, and COVID-19 impact on Mongolia, and finally the improving school meals. And then also the recommendations followed. So thank you again to Mr. Katsuma. All right, so we have the pre-session presentation. The rapporteur will invite Miss Yingjie Chen about the pre-session 3. So the Yingjie Chen, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I'm gonna share my screen first. Okay, so could you all see that? I'm Yingjie, and I'm now working at a environmental NGO which is based in Beijing, and I'm very glad and honored to be the rapporteur for the pre-session 3 and promoting sustainable and green recovery, especially under the very emergency circumstances. And we really talk about how to turn the pandemic crisis into collective SDG actions. So we have 2 presenters that day, and the first one is Mr. Johnson Kong, and he is a researcher at our Hong Kong Foundation, and his topic is sustainable banking policies in mainland China and in Hong Kong. The second presenter was Ms. Chuni King. She worked at Korean Foundation of Environmental Movement, and her topic is the environmental impacts and issues, focusing on plastic waste and management. So the highlighted issues we talked that day, the first one is more relevant with the SDG 13 and 17, so which is the financing for climate mitigation and adaptation. The second topic is more about SDG 8 and 12, which is managing plastic waste during COVID. And so we come to the first topic, is the financing for climate issues. So climate change is actually a bigger threat to the world compared to the COVID-19. We see extreme weather events such as the flooding in southern China and California wildfires. They all have created dramatic social and economic losses this year. And the business as usual approach cannot work anymore. So we have to push further and forward new climate actions. And actually, some countries have made new commitments very recently. For example, China, South Korea, and Japan have all announced net zero emission goals. They want to achieve that goal in about 2050 or 2060. And the question is how to finance the goal. And according to the BCG research, China actually needs about $15 trillion to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. And compared to other countries, banks' credit to the private non-financial sector are more significant source of finance in mainland China and Hong Kong. And thus, the financial institutions can actually influence on companies through financing. So climate change could also bring physical risks, such as destroying the assets to private sectors. And so the companies, they could lead and also there are some transitional risks. For example, the policy regulations on phase out coal investment, and this kind of regulations could put transitional impacts to the private sector. So at the same time, this kind of things could also put financial impacts to the bank system. And on the other hand, banks could play a positive role in contributing mitigation and adaptation through financing activities. So our presenter actually identified two approaches to sustainable finance. Actually, Hong Kong and mainland China, they're taking two different ways. So the first way is Hong Kong actually think the climate change could have impacts on companies. So they want to managing climate-related risks to enhance financial risk or return. And for mainland China, they're regarding that the company performance could have something to do with the climate. So they're using managing impact on climate as part of a company's social responsibility. So more specific, for Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority's measure for sustainable banking actually includes development of a common framework to assess the greenness baseline, strengthen coordination mechanism, such as cross-agency steering group, and establishing of Center for Green Finance to facilitate financing of sustainable infrastructure and green development. And for mainland China, since it's part of the social responsibility, so they're using ways to supervise or mobilize companies' behaviors. So the green, they're using things such as the green credit, and they're making green credit guidelines, like saying the increasing for support for green economy, low carbon economy, and circular economy, and could prevent environmental and social risks. And they also have other strategies such as the prudential treatment and interest subsidy and green refinancing. And this kind of financing mechanisms could also provide incentives for like companies to do green and to implement green projects. And when we come to the other topic, which is presented by Ms. King, she mainly talks about the plastic pandemic happened in South Korea. And she's saying about 16% increase in plastic waste between the first half of 2019 and 2020 in public facilities. For example, they are booming boxes, face masks, and this kind of waste. And during the same period, there has been an about 20% increase in delivery services. And this is about 74 increase in the value of delivery food. So this actually bring us some problems. For example, the uncleaned food containers actually made the waste sorting more difficult. And for the waste sorting system, there is too much waste to be dealt with. And with low oil price, actually producing new plastic is more economical than sorting and recycling wasted plastic. And delivery workers are under very high working pressures and given the increase in demand. So many of them, but in reality, many of them are self-employed, and thus they are not eligible to employees' benefit of corporations. So there are some challenges. First, there are some conflicting aspects on plastic waste during the COVID-19. For example, the hygienic concerns are like confounding with the increasing plastic waste. During the pandemic, the use of plastic for the hygienic purpose concerns was a high priority for the government. But despite the regulation was in place towards the reduction of single-use plastic. And there are also challenges for the CSOs to advocate for waste reduction, particularly during the COVID-19 period. And also the increasing the communication channels between Korean CSOs and the private sectors are not that open, because the CSOs often negotiate with the like the Korean government, but not have very direct like communication with the companies. So Kim gives some recommendations for the delivery workers. For example, she thinks we should increase commission fee between delivery workers and corporations. And also the Congress should improve the legislation, and by passing some laws on protecting the overworked delivery workers. And I also find some like other scholars talk about how to reduce plastic waste during the COVID. And I just want to briefly introduce some of them. For example, they could improve the design of policies and to addressing the psychological and behavioral barriers of from the general public, and including mistrust over the hygienic of reused things, reused products. And the second, and we could also encouraging investments in the development of the circular products. And also we could stimulating research into the development of new and sustainable technologies to recycle mix and other complex forms of plastic. And also for a long-term strategy, we could raise the environmental and social consciousness of citizens and development of the school curriculum as part of the environmental science education. We in that session, we also discussed quite a few questions. For example, the role of banks on the climate. So on firstly, the financing, the banks could influence companies through financing and creating incentives for green cooperation behaviors. And for banks, reducing financial risks and is also the driving force for them to implement sustainable banking. And for the impact of COVID on sustainable financing, the presenter think the impact is not explicit, but actually it postponed the sustainable financing process to some extent. But at the same time, it raised the awareness of climate risk management and also attracts more attention on social issues. So we are also saying how to foster potential regional cooperation on green finance. And the very easy way is to sharing best practices. And more importantly, we should build up platforms and focusing on encouraging the second approach of green banking, like to enhance the social responsibility. And also we could enforce mechanisms to avoid free riders. Lastly, the physical risks of climate change could be transboundary. So the collaboration in evaluating risk and financing response is needed. For the plastic waste management, particularly in South Korea, we think the waste issue need to work with the industry ministry and also with the enterprises. And also CSOs should seek ways to work with the trade union, which are significant influence on companies. So that's my sharing. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chen. Also, thank you for keeping the time. So Ms. Chen just summarized the pre-session 3 on the promoting sustainable and green recovery, especially with the particular focus on, I guess, the green finance and then rural bank, and how to collaborate through the different multi-stakeholders to build like the financing from by the green green policies. All right, so we just finished the three summaries wrap up by the rapporteurs about the three different pre-sessions. So we closed that part, and another, the speaker we are now invite. So before opening the floor for the discussion, I will invite a representative from the disability group. So actually, disability groups in Northeast Asia organized a side event last week for this Northeast Asia SDG Forum, titled COVID-19 and Disability Inclusive SDGs from Exclusion to Inclusion. So I will invite Ms. Rina Lee to share her inputs and the takeaway from this side event discussion for our further, debate. All right, so Ms. Rina Lee, you have the floor for the 15 minutes. Please unmute yourself. We cannot hear you. No, Rina Lee, we cannot hear you. Please unmute. No. Oh yeah, it's now. Oh, no. No, we cannot hear you, Rina Lee.
Okay, can you hear me? Something you can do is you click on the microphone button on the bottom left corner. There is an upper arrow. Can you check? Can you click on the upper arrow and make sure that the microphone is the one that you want it to be?
Yeah, I think that you can now speak. Could you say something? No. Okay, I think she has some technical problem, so we can wait for. All right, she is now doing something for the technical.
Have used my microphone for many different Zoom meetings. Yeah, so in the meantime, probably my engineer.
You just
okay, so now we can hear you. We can hear you.
Just talk to the phone. Rina, just talk to the phone.
Okay,
we will connect it to.
Right.
Just a second. Can you turn on the and then here?
Sorry to my old headset.
말씀해 보시겠어요?
So while we are waiting, let me give you some expression, the activities of the disability community in the Northeast Asian region. Actually, since last year, 5 to 6 countries in our region started to dialogue together in terms of implementing SDG, and then we try to get involved in the whole process of the implementation, and then at the same time we try to liaise SDG with the UNCLPD. And then luckily we maintained the cooperation work this year, and then this year we focused on COVID-19 and then disability rights. So an outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic directly affected persons with disabilities in many aspects of life, but actually I shared my presentation file so that it can be helpful to share my PPT, as the sound is not very good. The secretary, can you share my presentation file?
Yes, we will actually put up the screen, the PPT now. Just a second.
All right, good. So we had the 2 sets of actually meetings.
Right. Now, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, that's better. That's better.
It's better. Good. Right. Next slide. You can do it. Right. So actually, through the COVID-19 is a really, anyway, threatening event. But at the same time, that highlighted the significance of mainstreaming disability perspectives in all areas. So we organized the 2 sets of discussion with our colleagues. So in September, we generally shared the general situation in relation to COVID-19 and then lives of persons with disabilities. And then we met again in October, and then we discussed on more specific topics. And then I will share that findings again. Next slide, please. So these are some of the photos from 2 different meetings. So it involves Hong Kong, China, Mongolia, and Russia, and Japan. Next, please. Right. Before start my presentation, I would like to share this little post with you, which shows a very simple message, because we are all waiting for COVID-19 ends. Then we will all go back to our ordinary life and then go back to work. But for majority of persons with disabilities, actually this kind of emergency situation in isolation, it is a kind of their ordinary life. So it actually hits us to think about, again, what is actually basic human rights, to work together in the community. Yeah, but these things are not really happening for many people with disabilities. Next slide, please. So when we shared what is happening for people with disabilities under the pandemic, many countries share the following items. The first one was information. And then when, even like in Korea, when we have made this official briefing, in the beginning, there was no sign language, but the disability community immediately alerted the needs so that all the sign language was in place. But still, in many screening stations, again, then there were not many people who can help those people to get tested because they can't do sign language, or they cannot get the interpreter from the service center. And on the top of that, might be some of you might be aware of that easy read information. For many people with the developmental disabilities, they don't understand what the leaflet means. So notably, the Japan, the Daisy Consortium, and then some NGOs in Korea, they initiated the Make This Easy leaflet so that many people with the developmental disabilities, they are aware why they have to wear masks and then should stay at home. Right, and then many other countries also reported the health service. So there were not effective or sufficient medical treat. And then especially for people with a kidney illness who has to go to hospital on a regular basis and then do get treatment for 2 to 3 hours. But then because of a lack of space in a hospital, they were not able to receive the medical treatment in time. That's why some of them went to even more serious illness. And then third item was online education. Majority of students studied at home and then they had e-learning course. But again, for many people with the developmental disabilities who cannot concentrate on their study by themselves, then they found it very difficult. So that many parents, they could not go to work to care for their children at home. Next slide, please. And then this is actually the most serious situation on the COVID-19. So many people with disabilities, they live in a residential homes and then that facilities. But because of the structure where many people live together, and then that was quite fragile under COVID-19. So outspread in residential homes does not affect only resident, but also the care staff. So the UN actually produced the guideline for emergency situation, and then they advised actually many countries to make the emergency deinstitutionalization plan, and then to send those people with the disabilities back to their family and then try to find the place in the community. But when we had this dialogue with the other countries, actually in most countries, we were not able to do so. Rather than that, we had this measure of a cohort so that the whole institution was shut down. No one could go in, and then the residents could not come out. So that prevented the spread of a virus, but actually that also gave us some suspicion and an uncertainty of their own human rights. And next slide, please. So care gap. So many people used to receive personal assistance to maintain their daily lives, but because of this threat of spread of virus, many personal assistance services stopped, and then especially when disabled person has to stay in their home under the name of self-quarantine, and there were not enough care staff. So some of the NGO made a contribution to go into their house and then help them. And then some tragic accident also happened because many people with the developmental disabilities, they will not quite understand what is happening and with the COVID-19. So although parents or carer, they explained to them to stay in the house, but some of them could not understand, and then they asked to take them outside the house, and then some of them made some accident from their balconies, or some other family made tragedy by ending their lives because of the heavy burden of caring for the offspring with the developmental disabilities. And also many countries reported that women with disabilities faced multiple difficulties because they stay in their house. So many, the caring for family members with disabilities lay down onto them. And then some other countries also shared that they were exposed to intimate violence, and then there were not good ways to get support. Next slide, please. And then decrease in income. So because of many services shut down, as you know, some people with the visual impairment, they run the business in massage, but that's shut down. And then like this is a Mongolian case. So although government made some emergency relief measures, but in the beginning, actually disabled people were not receiving the benefit. Also, some other.
Leslie, I'm sorry to interrupt. So you may have 3 more minutes to complete
All
your
right.
presentation.
So fast. Right, then let's move on to some good practices. Despite all these difficulties, there were some good practices in cooperation. So could you move to number 2, good practices on multi-stakeholders quickly? Yes. So first thing was that because people working in the disability field, they are well aware what are the needs of persons with disabilities. And then they work closely together with the government. So firstly, they made this disability inclusive response manual, so that in the end, the government officially published that. Also, when the people with a disability went into the hospital, the DPOs greatly helped. And then China also reported that DPOs organized this support group and then raised the fund to send some basic items for disabled people. Next slide, please. So these are some photos, one from South Korea, the other one from China. So that the left one is that because of the lack of care staff, the staff of DPOs, they went into the house and then helping people with disabilities. And the next one, let's move quickly. So this is an easy version for people with disabilities. Those work were initiated by DPO first. And then second is a press conference, because we all alerted that the disability inclusive response should be made. And then luckily government took our request seriously, and then they developed the guideline. Next one, please. Right, this is a kind of online, the limit of online education, especially people who need the physiotherapy. So that this is a Hong Kong case. So they made this online consultation so that they could follow those exercises at home together with the parents' support. Next one, please. Right, also some subsidies for income support was made after the advocacy work made by DPOs. Next, please. Right, so ways forward. So from the COVID-19, disability community strongly felt that my COVID-19 responses to disability inclusive, including disaster risk reduction manual guideline in the countries. And also many services are shut down still. For people with disabilities, they need even small scale of community-based services. That's not only for health, but also for education and for social care. And then we need to pay more attention for women with disabilities for their personal needs. And also when we do recovery work, we needed to ensure job preparedness and the lack of adequate training result in inequality in the labor market. Also, through our discussion, we actually found through the COVID-19, we found that our society needs moves forward to more IT-based society. So there is happening more digital gap. So for people with disabilities, if they got appropriate IT training, then that could be another opportunity for them to join in more wider job opportunity. And then lastly, we would like to say the institutionalization plan so that many people with the disability to live in the community with the more the community-based services. Yeah, this is our ideas and then thoughts from disability community. Thank you for your time and thinking together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Ms. Rina Lee. She's Secretary General, Korea Disability Forum. Okay, so we are all done, the 4 different presentations. So now we're gonna open the floor, but so far there's no any question in the chat box. So in this case, I would like to ask some question to presenters, for speakers. So, we are now talking about the multi-stakeholder based approach to achieve SDGs from the different angles. So I think that we have 4 different angles to cover up. Now, how to motivate or accelerate, the process of SDG achievement. So, question itself, how we can enhance civic engagement on the voluntary basis. So what are the potential collaboration among civil society groups or between state and society to address the COVID-19 pandemic and accelerate the SDG progress? So it's kind of the state society synergy effect, how we can motivate or mobilize, the civic engagement, civil society, the intervention into the process of COVID-19 pandemic handling. So I think that you have your own thoughts, or you have another observation of your own, I think, the pre-session. In addition to summary, you provided to the today's session. So, okay, so let me ask each panelist. So who's gonna be first? I guess like the Miss sorry for my bad pronunciation of your name. So you can start first. Miss Angma Angboard, are you there? All right, so let me move on to another speaker. So the Professor Yasushi Katsuma. So what is your take about the civic engagement, voluntary basis?
Hello, thank you for your question. I think we need to engage in multi-stakeholder approach because now we have so many different groups raising their voices, but COVID-19 is a common threat to us, to all of us. So I think we need to identify common framework in which we can work together in collaboration. So we need to identify differences and different needs for different vulnerable groups. However, at the same time, we probably need to find a kind of a common framework in which we can collaborate. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. I think the thoughts, how we can cover up especially the common platform to invite and share the different practices. All right, so let's invite another speaker, Ingrid Chen. Miss Chen.
Hi, hello.
Yeah, can you share your wisdom? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so for how to motivate the civil engagement actually is an old topic, but I think we have some new chances during the COVID-19 period because the COVID-19 have really raised the public like awareness to some extent, and more people are getting are caring about the public issues. So I think one point is that we could connect the climate things or climate issues with the public health issues, because they are these 2 topics are actually interrelated, but the connections are not emphasized before. So so we can actually like not saying utilize, but to wisely connect the COVID-19 with climate change and also other social issues we are caring about. So like to increase the importance among people.
All right, thank you, Ms. Chen. So, and then the Miss Lee, Rina Lee, what is your take on that question?
Yeah, I mean, we have tried very hard to get engaged in this kind of a dialogue. However, I found many actually disability community, they are not invited. So it's not only about COVID-19, but I'm talking about more the general process of implementation of SDG. So I would like to actually make the request for all government. When they establish a national platform on SDG, they try to invite the disability community to get involved. Once they are on the platform, then they know what is required. So, but actually, even including Korea, this is not like an official mechanism, but just a one-off. Whenever they need something, then they call. But I found that there's no consistency. So it will be really good if they made this official mechanism and then invite civil society as stakeholders. So they run this mechanism on a regular basis. Thank you.
Right, actually we have the one question in chat box. So, but due to the time limit, my job is keep the time. We have to finish up our session no later than 4:15. So we have 2 minutes. The question itself, what is the youth NGO's contributions in Northeast Asia's SDG progress, particularly during the COVID-19 time period? So it is about the youth, NGO contributions, how we can evaluate the youth, especially younger generation engagement. So I think you guys have maybe 30 seconds for that question. So anyone would like to say something about that question in 30 seconds? Professor Katsuma. You always my best guest. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think young people are really struggling. And I think the speaker from International Labour Organization pointed out, young people, particularly at school now, are now trying to graduate. They are going to be hard hit by the job market, which is not favorable to them. So I think it is important for those young people in transition from school to job market to be supported properly. And rather than just we treat them as beneficiaries, they are very active, and we probably need to work together with them so that we can bring about some social change. So that's my intervention. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's great. So I really, want to share as many as I can. Invite your different thoughts, but it's time's up. So I will close the session 3. I'm really appreciate and learn a lot from the 4 different angles, especially wrap up of pre-sessions, as well as the disability in a perspective. So really thank you all. And then I'm gonna give mic to Dr. Victoria. Sorry, Victoria. Oh my God. Victoria Panova. Sorry about that. No, you can take it.
Thank you so much, Dr. King. It was really an enlightening session that you were moderating. I believe it's, I also learned a lot on how much have been done so far by different stakeholder groups and how much are there initiatives that you were talking about, how much they help the ordinary people in our countries to go through those times of pandemics. A lot yet to do, a lot yet to experience. We're not over this problematic period yet, but that's really a great way to go forward. Now we are in the session that would be discussing partnership in their SDG implementation, the experience of public-private partnerships. And we are having a really brilliant set of speakers who would be talking to us and telling us how much they are their companies have managed to help and to work with the governments, to work with the people in order to put forward their ideas of well-being, put closer and their achievement of SDGs. As we know, pandemic situation have really impacted the pace and ability of all the countries to actually achieve those stated goals, even more so in socially vital areas. And that is why we can only come further to achieving those aims only all together. So nothing can be done without help of our businesses. And allow me first to give the first floor to our speaker, the Vice President of Alibaba Group, Mr. Song Liu, who will be talking about his company's innovative solutions in collaboration with the government to respond to COVID-19. Mr. Liu, the floor is yours, please.
Thanks for Victoria's introduction, and I'm very happy to join the SDG initiative discussion. And I will share some experience in Alibaba's group and also how we help the country working with some local government in the pandemic period. Let me share my PowerPoint. Can all you see the PowerPoint? Okay, thank you. So, my initiative is talking about how digitalization helped the country to fight with the epidemic and also reshape the whole world. I think, so among all the things happen this year, we see a lot of uncertainty, we see a lot of challenge, we see a lot of miserable stories. But one thing we are certain as a internet company is that digitalization is one certain thing in the era of uncertainty. And for the country, you know that China has been very, it's a leading country in digital economy, especially when the digital economy, all the business model like e-commerce, mobile payment, our online learning, and also we work together. The way we work together has been a very important country among all the digital economy countries. So we can expect after this year, all the people in China will be more appreciate how the digitalization can change the country's economy and our social behavior. We see after this year's pandemic period, our online education, healthcare, digital governance, and also all the industry has entered a new area of digital transformation. So digital economy has become the everyone's ideology in this country in this year. So during the hardest time in February and March, so we see how the digital infrastructure provide a countless economy. So more than 130 million students attending class in the last 6 months through all the online distance learning platform, and also more than 200 million people working by home in the last 3 months, and provide a very fruitful result for China economy. So when we are talking about the COVID-19, I think firstly we will thanks all the medical professionals' hard work, and especially in February and March. After the March, I think the country pay more attention on how to using the digitalization, digital technology, and the co-work model between government, citizen, and also the technology company to fight with the epidemics. Also, even the mobile payment provide very convenient tools for the people. They do not need to pay cash. For distance, for distance learning, even the rural area, for those poor students, they can learn from their village. And in February the 3rd, we see that more than 70 million people are they go to the DingTalk, our online platform, to make the distance learning. So in the 2 hours, we need to expand more than 100,000 servers on Alibaba Cloud to meet the student traffic. Just like the Double 11, you have that China's e-commerce single day with a shopping festival. So this is how the cloud as an infrastructure provide the better convenience for more than 70 million students when they all are online and make the education traffic. Also, for our human life changed a lot. Even most of the China people, they have been enjoying a new lifestyle, even for their gym, for their shopping, and also for their grocery and food delivery result. So you know that it's interesting. In the last academic period, which is 17 years ago, it's the China digital economies the opening year. Both the Taobao and the Jingdong is founded in the period of the SARS. It's very interesting. After 17 years, you'll see the whole e-commerce, mobile payment, online services, online education become so convenient for everyone. So they change their behavior. And also, like I have mentioned, the DingTalk is Alibaba's online collaborate platform, help the student. What we have learned, more than 130 million students, and also more than 15 million enterprise working through the DingTalk in the last several months. And for the DingTalk user, they have booming 3 times than the Spring Festival. So that become a new convenient platform for all the person. Now, for most of the students, when they go to the class which is out of the school, they're using the online model. Even we are now back to normal. For most of the enterprise, they know how to leverage the, just like we are doing now, the Zoom-like. DingTalk is just like the Zoom. It's China's enterprise and our students using the platform. For the online clinic services and the drug delivery, we have we boom the services, especially for the people who is not living in China, or a lot of the people in the world, they want to learn how to fight, how to deal with COVID-19. We have using the Alipay and also the Taobao, the mobile client as a channel for all the China's doctors. They can provide online services for all the people in the world. And also the Ali Healthcare, they provide 24 hours drug delivery for those people when they in the COVID-19 times. I think the healthcare, online healthcare will be booming in the next 10 years in China. And also we think this will benefit all the people who is maybe old and also living in the rural area. And some new model happened in February. In February, most of the big shopping mall, retail store, they do not open. One of the China biggest shopping mall, which is called Suning, they have their employees have nothing to do in the February. But for another Alibaba's subsidiary, which is called Hema, which is a grocery and food supermarket, they are lack of the employee. So you know that the sharing economy has been very popular in China, and in February the 10th, only 1 week after the Spring Festival, Hema switched the employee with Suning, so make all the talent and also the employee can they belongs to Suning, but they can work for Hema. Very interesting innovation in the academic period. Technology. I think in the fighting for the COVID-19, especially as a virus, I think the AI technology has provided a fast and accurate analysis power, and this AI tools has been deployed also in Japan, more than 17 rural hospitals now at this moment. And also so we open by the end of the January, Alibaba opened our computing power for all the world R&D for when they want to work for the COVID-19 drugs and the vaccines. And also we're using the big data to make the academic prediction, which is meet more than 97 accuracy for the country, how to predict which is the next destination where the virus may be booming. And also our AI have been helped the multilingual doctor to talk through the Ding Talk. I think for the whole COVID-19 period, only some of the animal and some of the children become more happy. And also we see the reaction of environment is that the earth become better in the last several months. And also if the country and also the world come back to the normal, we need to think how to leverage in the technology of digitization to provide a more sustainable environment. Yeah. And for China, I think the digitization has become the most fundamental force to drive growth. And for Asia, I think in the next 10 years, it happens too. 10 years later, the Asia will provide more than 70% of the whole global GDP and enjoys the most popular internet user in the world. So digitalization is even more important for Asia when we have more younger generation, more young people, and also our culture is more what we call the digitalization friendly culture. So for Alibaba, we do not only operate in China, we work in Asia, we work in Singapore, ASEAN, and also Japan and Korea. I think in the Q3, China economy have been recovery, and also I think intelligent control of the COVID-19 is one important thing. I think every country now still facing the challenge to fight the COVID-19 may get the lesson. The intelligent control is the foundation for their economy recovery, and also in the now time we need to focus on our domestic consumption, and also we see the China the Q3 GDP is up near 5% from a year ago. It's a totally recovery, and we see in the what we call the Golden Week, about 1 month ago. So we see the consumption booming in China, and also, but at the same time, we still have the intelligent control for the COVID-19. We still wear the mask. We still check the healthcare kit. Also, the whole all the people know how to deal with the COVID-19 in the country. Last not the least is the whole period of the fighting with the COVID-19 opened a new discussion about how to get a better global governance. I think in the China's practice fighting with the COVID-19, the government, the community, including the company like Alibaba, also the university, also the citizen, I think all the three become, they get a better collaborative and also collective governance. So based on the digital platform, also based on the smart device like the what we call the smartphone and also IoT, AI, this technology, we see a new path for the global governance is how to leverage the platform and the digital technology to make a better collaborate governance between government, community, and the public. So one interesting thing we have been talking about the digital technology for many years, and we're talking about the data. So one interesting is the deep connection between data and water-like wisdom. So we see a picture which is China's philosopher Lao Tzu. He have wisdom of how to deal with uncertainty. How he is famous for his water-like wisdom. So in digital world, we also see the digital world is they have big power, they are uncertain, but how to we follow the traditional Eastern wisdom like the water-like wisdom. Also, we leverage the technology like the digital platform, and we provide a new relationship between government, community, and the public. This is a last but not the least session about our past. We work, Alibaba work with Tsinghua University for a new book will be announced next week, next month, called the Digital Governance. We recall all the experience in the COVID-19 period and try to learn some lesson and getting some model how to make a digital governance model for a better world. So that's my sharing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Liu. Indeed, your presentation also showed not only how much your company have contributed to their possibility for China to overcome the crisis. And we're seeing that really it is demonstrating the real headway and a real miracle in terms of how China managed to be the first one to face this tragedy, to be responding so efficiently all together that now we're seeing a really kind of a good situation over there. And I think that China is the only big economy in the world that is having positive growth this year. I think it's almost it's projected to be at around 2%. So it's a real headway. And you also demonstrated it really well. And it is interesting to see that pandemics being a challenge at the same time offers an opportunity.
Yes.
And humanity really has to look at things that seems very difficult, very unfortunate as an opportunity, because it does allow them to go over the problems, find new solutions, innovative solutions, and actually make progress. And it's interesting that the digitalization as it is started in China during the first SARS back in 2003.
Yes.
And So this is very telling, and I think countries have to start looking more into things like that, more as an opportunities, and look into new ways and innovative ways of going over it. Meanwhile, I know you will have to leave soon, but there are already questions for you. So first question coming from Chayan Hyun. I thank Mr. Sonliu for informative speech. Due to increased amount of online system and active growth of e-commerce, I've heard that there's a massive increase.
Yes, I know the privacy. Okay.
Yeah, you read it, right?
Yes, this is a rising concern even in China on our people and also the government. I think this is a very important thing in the next 10 years for the internet next wave booming when they go deeper to human life. First, I want to recall Victoria's the comments. Do not waste a crisis. So we can learn many things in a crisis because the humanity becomes so big. So we can see many things and which lesson can be used in the next 10 years. And for the privacy things, I think all the internet company and see this as a challenge. And also we are now build a new organization working with the government on the personal information collective and also the privacy. So now we have the security organization within Alibaba Group. So they now have a privacy built-in organization. So every application, when with a new version and a newly launched application, they need to follow the compliance of the government and also make a privacy built-in application. They need to go through all the compliance and also all the what we call the data security check. Then you can launch the application. So the MII in China, China Ministry of Information and Industry, they have been launched privacy and personal information protection law this year. And also after the big use of the what we call the healthcare kit or healthcare QR code. So we need to face the challenge. And also I think it's a government compliance principle, and also for technology company, we need to provide our internal organization building the principle and also the our internal compliance principle, like the every application, every apps need to be a privacy built-in design, and also the design need to go through all the government compliance. Then we can launch to the world. Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. Indeed, this is really one of the most vital parts of their activities of both companies and governments to work towards the data security, data safety,
Yes.
because we've seen, I think all over the world, but in Russia as well, a rising amount of fraud around digital services, be it banking, be it e-commerce. So it's a really serious problem, and really databases, were leaked to their black market. So it's a problem that has to be resolved definitely, and one of the most important ones and primary ones. I think you have another question, which is on the contradiction of Alibaba's rising consumption and SDG 12 on responsible consumption and production. So if you could respond to that, please.
I will try to know what's the deep meaning for, but for the planet, this rise isn't this controverting SDG. So, excuse me. So can you elaborate the questions more about the why? What's the intention of this question?
Probably if Walter Ritter could elaborate more, but I believe this is about that we are looking in order to achieve SDG 12 at more responsible consumption, at consuming less, and being okay with, not 500 liters of water per person, but as much as you need, because some countries are lacking the ability to have those resources. So how much their profit-prone policies of the company to have more bigger consumption from people it can be compared with a general tendency.
Okay, I think it's a question about the inclusive, how to using the digital economy, or what we call the e-commerce model, to help for more countries. We are doing very well in Indonesia and also Malaysia in ASEAN, and also we are working with the country, and we are so we are not a Fortune 500 those kind of company. We do not go there to launch a Alibaba subsidiary. We are invest and incubate the company in Indonesia, and those their startup and those innovation company, and we enable those startup and the innovation company, even as a university, to build application. We share our experience in China, how to make the build a system, how to make the how to attract those consumers, and we are using the enable model. We are not open so many subsidiary or branch, or we are working with local talent, is a local startup company, to provide what we call the pervasive and also inclusive model for even for those poor country, for those poor people. They can using the open source technology, using our mature operation model to build their own business.
Thank you so much. I think we have now moving on. Thank you for your comprehensive answers. We are now moving to our next speaker, Ms. Uri Cho, who is representing their KT Corporation. She's a senior manager there. And KT Corp has done a lot also during the pandemics and demonstrated great results, and she will talk about global epidemic prevention platform and public-private partnership on infectious diseases manager. Ms. Cho, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. And then, even though I don't see all of you, the participants here, yeah, it is very nice to meeting you. And then let me start my presentation. Let me first share my slide. All right. Okay, so as the moderator explained, KT has a platform which is called Global Epidemic Prevention Platform. So basically, this platform is a mobile. We are using mobile service and to assist government to monitor the risk of infection to enter the country, and contact tracing, and also giving alert for prompt response. Okay, so maybe some of you probably do not know about who is KT. So KT, this is overview of our company. So KT actually established it very long, like it has kind of 135 years old, which started as a first telecommunication company in Korea. And then the biggest market for us is pay TV, and we have 25 offices globally. All right, so with the adoption of SDGs in 2015, KT intended to mainstream SDG themes into our services. So KT has basically three specialized areas. One is AI. We have AI speaker, and we also provide network for connected cars. And the last one, our last specialty is big data. And then GPP, the solution falls under big data. So how GPP actually was created, we go all the way back to 2015 when Korea had MERS for the first time. At the time, there was a businessman who traveled Saudi Arabia, in fact, where he got MERS, and then he he had a transition in Bahrain, free of disease, and his last destination was Korea. And it was, Korea never had MERS before. That's why definitely the government didn't understand the symptoms. So the businessman was supposed to self-reporting that he visited the infected area, which is Saudi Arabia. However, he didn't do self-reporting. Therefore, we had this many casualties on the right side, as you can see. Compared to the casualty and impact of COVID-19 right now, these numbers are very small. However, as I said, Korea never had infectious disease before, and it was first time for us to have that many casualty and an impact. Therefore, it was very chaotic for us, like a national disaster. So, however, everybody, uses phones. So when you carry your phone, we basically understand where you are, that is the nature of our business. So at the moment, as a response to the crisis, in order not to have the same casualty and impact, KT basically shared that mobile insight, to be helpful to prevent future pandemics. So we proposed collaboration to Korean government. So this is how we started formally. KCDC here is Korea Center for Disease Control, and which is a national quarantine authority here in Korea. We had the MOU. So basically what KT's role was to, we identify the risk travels and we share that information with the national quarantine. So, and at the same time, we send SMS alert, be careful where you are traveling is contaminated or contracted by MERS or Ebola. And when there is an outbreak inside of the country, and then we provide epidemiology. And then, and also, basically KCDC, the national quarantine, once they are fed that data, risk travels into their system, they can see all the statistics on their dashboard so that they can properly respond to prevent the epidemics. So just to repeat, so basically the GPP, the platform started in 2016. And to give you the detailed solutions about the functions, basically it monitors risk and also assists response. However, the main function regarding tracing, I will just explain you this time. So we have two tracing models. One is international mobility tracing, which is basically to understand the risk travels abroad. And then this is kind of a regular surveillance for the government. And then the second, which is domestic mobility tracing, is when there is an outbreak happening inside of the country, we provide the contact tracing. So this one is to explain you, when KT's customers are traveling to epidemic-prone countries, KT sends SMS alert to the customers saying that you have arrived Ebola-prone country. Ebola is this type of disease, and then there are preventive measures you have to take an action at an individual level. like wash your hands, or don't eat this and that, or wear like long sleeves. Because in general, customers, or in general travelers, when they travel to other countries, they don't really pay attention what kind of disease there are. And also we share the information to the government. So on the right side, you can see all the statistical relevant data, that how many travelers been to these countries, have come back to Korea, and status of global infectious disease as well. The second, as I explained you briefly, this is domestic mobility tracing. So domestic mobility tracing is not a regular surveillance of risk. However, when we fail to prevent the entry of disease to enter the country, then we provide the contact tracing. Under domestic mobility tracing, there are two. First, as you can see the two boxes on the left side, the far left is to trace of the travel history of confirmed cases. On the right side, this is to identify close contacts of confirmed cases. And so the government, when they get the information, they quarantine the affected areas and to send SMS alert so that people don't go at these places. But just I will explain it later. However, just note that this information is when we do epidemiology, when the suspects do lie or they don't remember their travel histories, then only in that case this service is being conducted. It's not a blanket tracing. The next slide. So, so what is the impact of the solutions? On the left side, you can see that Korea has been very well known, that has really well managed it, flattened the curve on COVID-19. There has been lots of call globally to share the responses. That's why the government also published the publication white paper. Right now in Korea, the COVID is less than approximately 100 per day, 100 cases. So basically pretty much is well managing. So what I can say is definitely has really contributed to reducing the casualty, to reduce cases. On the right side, this is more about economic impact. So OECD and also National Bureau of Economic Research, which is well-known research papers, they say a lot that blanket lockdown really is not helping aggravating economic impact of COVID-19. However, contact tracing probably is more helpful. So on the right side, these are the summary of the research. So basically in Korea, aggressive testing and tracking actually helps more, helps more infectious disease and they reduce the economic impact. So basically, Korea's expected economic growth is positive, according to the IMF report. So next one is to reduce pandemics. If Korea is only performs well, it's not helping because it's global pandemics. Therefore, there should be a global collaboration in order to try out if this works or not. KT started expand the solution in other countries. So we chose these 3 and then we implemented. In 2019, we launched a GPIP service in these 3 countries. Okay, so one of the countries is Kenya, and then this is how the service is working. So basically there is a Safaricom is the largest telecommunication company in Kenya, and it's also well known for their mobile M-Pesa, digital financial system for underprivileged people. So anyways, Safaricom and then the Ministry of Health, they share the data and send SMS alert to Kenyan Safaricom customers. And on the bottom, you can see the dashboard of the ministry. So it's basically similar with the Korean version. However, this is a consent-based, which means it's like a service. So if Safaricom customers, we promote the service, and if Safaricom customers like it, and then they subscribe the service. So you must be wondering, so what are the lessons learned and how is it? So through the experience of launching the service in 3 countries, the most important thing, I would like to say the 4 things. Definitely there should be a strong government ownership. I mean local government ownership. Because the solution is very multifaceted, faceted character. So it requires the engagement of ICT experts, Ministry of ICT, Ministry of MOH, and also legal department as well. So it is very multifaceted. So there should be a multi-stakeholder collaboration indeed. And the second is I would like to mention about legal issues, because each country has a different legal context regarding data collection. As you can see, this GPIP solution basically identifies where you are. So if you are in a risk area, we give you alert. So increase the awareness of risk. So it's all about data collection. So, and then third, definitely financial sustainability. The 3 cases, KT did as a donation. We built a server, but in the case of Safaricom, they built their own server. However, what I'm saying is that KT has funded that. I funded the Ministry of Health system. However, KT is a private company. We did as a corporate social responsibility. However, to continue the innovations and the service, so we need financial sustainability. Last one is infrastructure, but this is not a big deal because this technologically is very simple. So this is the 4 things that we need to have in mind. And then what is the way forward? The 2 solutions about tracing is focused on tracing, but KT understands that we really need extensive, more holistic approach to become become a good solution to prevent future pandemics, because we probably have more or similar and more COVID-19 kind of pandemics in the future. So we would like to improve our solution to cover test, trace, and treat. So these are the solutions we are developing right now. Yes, so let me just skip this part. So since the meeting right now where we are highlighting a lot about multi-stakeholder collaboration, to summarize the journey from 2016, KT is a telecommunication company that knows what we are doing about technology. We propose our technology and the government buys in. bought in. So how GPP actually started? If there was no engagement of the government, there was no buy-in by the government, definitely this cannot be sustainable and cannot be very beneficial to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 today. And also the Korean the Korean success, there wouldn't be this Korean success. What I want to say is that, however, as I said, we need more cooperation, like including ensuring sustainable financial sustainability and also legal issues. So, however, we will do as a KT, having innovative technology, we will keep doing our best, and we should to create values for the world. However, technology cannot stand alone. That's therefore we need more collaboration. Yeah. Lastly, I'm finishing my presentation, and lastly, adopting our solution in other countries is a continuous work. So any of you, is interested in having this solution in your country, please, you can contact me. Thank you so much for your warm attention, and I'm ready for any questions. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Choi. It was really interesting. There are a few questions that we have. One would be somewhat in close to what the previous speaker was also asked. GPP collects a lot of personal information, right? And how is data is being kept and analyzed? And also, how do you protect data privacy? So those are very
yeah, thank you so much for the question. And yeah, definitely regarding data privacy, I have been receiving so many questions, and then actually right now the Korean National Quarantine Authority and relevant organizations are really working hard to protect data. So there are 3 steps basically. So first, ensure to limit data collection. So as I briefly explained, when we conduct epidemiology, interviewer of the organization is asking questions, where did you go? Or like where did you go and where were you? What time were you there? And in the interview, so many cases are happening. The suspects are lying because they are so scared. If I said the truth where I was, and then so these cases are happening so much. So, and also most of people, they don't remember whom did I meet or where did I eat. So because they have to trace their memory. So when memories are not clear and when people are lying, only in that case the government contact telecommunication company and asking questions, because to protect other people is more important than the privacy of the suspect. And then second is limit, as I said, 3 steps, right? The second is limited authorized entity. So as I said, when the National Quarantine Authority is asking the travel history from KT of the suspect or confirmed cases, then they just don't ask KT directly. There are certain rules and regulations, and then it has to gone through police. And when KT receives the request, we also delivers that through police. And once the let me just call it KCDC. The KCDC received that data from KT, and only authorized person in the organization can access to the data. The third one is there's no disclosure. no disclosure of personal data. Here, personal data means the name and then personal ID and age. Anything related to personal data is disclosed. It's not shared at all. So what is shared then is only the area that they visit and the time. Is and also not consecutive way, but also sporadic point of the area and the time. And this is the only shared publicly. And even this data is removed in 14 days. So through these 3 steps, Korean government is doing its best to protect, to keep data security. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Cho. Indeed, we could, in fact, go on for much longer because it's a very interesting topic, very relevant for each of their participants. But I got permission to overrun our session only for some minutes, and thus I will have to also let you go, unfortunately, because it's really been an interesting talk and very interesting discussion. Thank you so much. And now allow me to further give the floor to our host, Mr. Gunbold Basanjab, who is the head of the East and Northeast Asia office, who will be moderating the next session on sub-regional perspective of accelerating SDGs and the way forward. Mr. Basanjab, thank you so much for inviting me, and the floor is yours.
Certainly, thank you very much, Victoria. Thank you for joining this year's forum again, and thank you for moderating this very important session. Thank you, and stay well, and we will stay in touch. Now, so we'll start the last session of the forum. So I'd like to organize the session as follows. First, I would like to ask my colleague, Sangmin, to share the takeaways from this year's forum for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then I will invite representatives from civil society organizations to present their statement. Then, so we will have some open floor discussion. So please send us your comments and what you would like to highlight from the discussions we have been listening throughout these 5 interactive sessions of the forum through this chat box. So, and we will take note of your comments and the comments when we prepare and consolidate our inputs for our Asia Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development that will take place next year. As you know, this sub-regional forum on sustainable development goals is a part of this regional Asia Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development to prepare the materials to address the annual forum. It's being held at the headquarters of ESCAP in Bangkok each year. So then I will ask the Secretariat we will ask our colleague from Bangkok, colleague from the Division of Environment and Development, Ricardo, to give some introductory update on the APFSD, Asia Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development, that I just briefly described. So now let me, so that will be basically the format I'll be moderating through this, our last wrap-up session. Now I will ask my colleague, Dr. Sangmin Nam, to share the takeaways from the discussions we just held over the course of 2 days of the forum. Samin.
Thank you. During last 2 days, actually less than 6 hours, we had a quite extensive discussion. So this forum covered the first, the progress in 2030 agenda implementation, and second, accelerate digitalization, and third, multi-stakeholder engagement and public-private partnership. During in this connection, we had 23 presentations. So it is quite difficult to summarize all the points, but I would like to highlight some key points. Also, we have listened to result outcomes from 3 pre-events and 2 side events, which were just presented. And the first point is government's response to SDG implementation. We have seen progress in achieving SDGs and linking with the national agenda. One of a typical case was Chinese government's approach to integrating SDG into national goals with regard to poverty eradication, green and inclusive development, and global partnership. Also, we have seen institutionalizing multi-stakeholder engagement in SDG processes. The Mongolian government's approach to whole of government, whole of society, and also its adoption of a Vision 2050. And also there is a new law on development policy, which are in line with the institutionalizing SDGs. And we have seen also conscious efforts for engaging multi-stakeholders. Russian presentation on PNR preparation, which was driven by 17 working groups for all 17 goals. Holders, whether from government to civil society. And out of case, Korean government's approach to KSDG, which also engaged the multi-stakeholders. And Japanese government's SDG implementation guiding principle, so revised guiding principle, also engage multi-stakeholders. And also we will update the plan for developing new BNR. So China and Japan will have their second BNR next year, together with DPRK's first BNR in 2021. And we had also quite extensive discussion on COVID impact on SDGs. Certainly, there are various measures, policies, programs from the governments. But in the same time, there are deepening challenges and widening the pool of vulnerable people and widening digital divide, particularly for elderly and low-income household, rural population, people with a disability were highlighted. Also, increasing challenges of people with a disability. So we had a presentation on this topic, and particularly on inequality in access to services due to a lack of information was highlighted. And during the pre-event, there was also point on increasing domestic violence. And one of the most important topic we discussed was also increasing unemployment, especially for youth. They are not losing not only opportunities today, but they are also losing opportunities for tomorrow with the lack of limited access to training and education. In this connect, also we listen to increasing environmental challenges with plastic waste, especially. While governments are carrying out various actions, also this forum highlighted the various roles of civil society organizations in terms of advocacy and awareness, and highlighting specific challenges of vulnerable groups, like street cleaners of visually impaired people in there are specific cases were presented. Also information dissemination for disability inclusive response, and also foreign workers and migrants who have a serious barrier due to this language problem, and also supporting vulnerable groups. So there are various cases presented by CSO groups. And the last point is a partnership. Partnership with the government and private sector and multi-stakeholders. So we just listened to public-private partnership with regard to ICT in pandemic responses. Also yesterday, Secretary General of KBCSD highlighted the role of private sector, business sector in not only implementing SDGs, but in responding to COVID. Also, yesterday, Russian government highlighted how they engaged the private sector in this PNR preparation and also 2030 agenda implementation. Also, during the pre-session, there was a very interesting presentation on the role of banking sectors for mobilizing resources to fight climate change. And there is increasing efforts not only from the government, also from banking sector itself to mobilize their resources towards combating climate change. Also, in this process, we have a look at various approaches, process and the trend of accelerate digitalization. And in this process, we also look at digital divide and then the need of digital governance on digitalization, not only at the domestic level, also at the global level. And privacy, we just discussed how those companies can secure privacy. And so with the quite highlight on digitalization, it is more or less clear that this is the way, but how we can utilize effectively to support implementing SDGs will be questioned. But in this regard, role of stakeholders in this process is important. With that, let me conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sang-min. So indeed, so we covered the whole spectrum of our agenda addressing the issues we have been focusing throughout this year, engaging with all stakeholders from governments and civil society organizations, business and public sectors. Okay, and thank you. And now, so I'd like to ask our representatives from the civil society organizations. So first, I'd like to ask Miss Ritsuko Takahashi. So she's from the Japan Youth Platform for Sustainability. So please, Miss Ritsuko.
Hi, I'm Ritsuko Takahashi from the Japan Youth Platform for Sustainability. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to make a speech. We, the participants from civil society organizations, CSOs from China, Japan, Mongolia, and Republic of Korea, welcome the 4th Northeast Asia Multi-Stakeholder Forum on Sustainable Development, organized by UNESCAP on 3rd to 4th November 2020 online, and appreciate the UNESCAP East and Northeast Asia office for hosting this forum. The planet is facing its environmental limitations and new threats, such as climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic. These issues not only exaggerate the planet's vulnerability, but also call for accelerated solidarity. To achieve a sustainable society and recover from the pandemic, we should build synergy and make stronger ties across all stakeholders. In this context, we call on all stakeholders to collaborate to address the prominent challenges in the following four main sectors. Over the economy, despite efforts made by states, challenges in environmental destruction and degradation are worsening and inequalities are widening, with vulnerable populations suffering the most. Considering these obstacles, we call for actions for all stakeholders to elevate the importance of SDGs for COVID-19 recovery with the future generations, orient economic stimulus actions to widen social protection for the marginalized population, mobilize full of government action to advance policy and full of society action with the private sector and CSOs to maximize synergies and minimize trade-offs, and strengthen governance systems for equal access to smart schooling, delivery of social service, and support SMEs. With a full of government approach, it is crucial to take all the measures to reduce the economic disparity widened by the COVID-19 crisis and protect people from falling into poverty. In particular, financing more for social protection, social security, and job creation. Over the society, marginalized people or groups, such as women, people with disabilities, elderly, and youth, are often found to have difficulties in independently taking care of themselves. The issue is largely due to the vulnerability resulting from discrimination, structural obstacles, and lack of access to governance and policymaking. Taking this into consideration, we call for all stakeholders to implement policies fully respecting the principle of leave no one behind through the following actions. Expand and institutionalize space for CSOs and people under vulnerable situations to engage in decision-making process. Refine current laws and policies to effectively eradicate gender-based violence. Provide financial and material aids for economically and socially jeopardized people. Ensure equal and continuous access to education and educational assets under current situation.
So now, thank you, Ritsuko. Thank you for sharing your perspective and highlighting the social and economic issues, how we build better the solid foundation to address the issues, protecting the vulnerable groups in our population in this sub-region. So now I'd like to ask Ms. Cheong-hyun, representative from Tinkerbell Korea, the CSO from Korea. Ms. Hyun, please.
Hello, my name is Chae Young Hyun, and I am honored to speak for the CSO's position paper today. So over the environment, various life-threatening environmental issues were worsened during the pandemic. The drastic increase of single-use waste, petite social awareness of waste management systems for reuse and recycle, and severe air pollution due to persistent emission of greenhouse gas have led to irreversible destruction to the environment. To eradicate the basic hindrance for a sustainable environment, we call for actions to all stakeholders to limit fundamental overproduction of plastic products, to educate on proper ways to dispose plastics to the civil society, to invest in sustainable waste management systems, to require collective work to reduce greenhouse gas emissions based on the Paris Agreement of UNFCCC. Over the governance, there is still a case of having not an integrated follow-up systems for SDGs at national level, and a weak multi-stakeholder engagement mechanism for inclusiveness and integrated in countries. Meanwhile, SDGs were used for promoting export-oriented, economic growth in science and technology fields without thoughtful consciousness of human rights. Amidst of COVID-19 pandemic, exploitation of freedom of expression, hence anonymous defamation, is at stake due to the absence of technological ethics. Understanding these current circumstances, we demand all stakeholders to establish a comprehensive policy coordination system for SDGs implementation with a multi-stakeholder engagement mechanism at local and national level. Adopt basic principles and guidelines of IT cooperations to protect digital rights for all. Update national taxation laws and global policies for e-commerce and digital platforms. Strengthen the international and institutional commitments for transboundary digital economic sustainable production and consumption. We believe to fight the current severe pandemic, we must call for all Northeast Asian countries, governments, stakeholders, and CSOs to join the persistent and coordinated efforts to avoid discreteness among the nations. In this regard, we reaffirm the importance of the venue of the forum, which allows all the stakeholders from any member state to participate. We look for the future in which all countries can host the forum and positively support each other for the effective implementations of the SDGs. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Chaeyeon. As you and Ritsuko highlighted, and so really it's a very strong call from our civil society organizations for stronger ties among all stakeholders to accelerate the implementation of SDGs. So I thank all our members of civil society organizations for your contribution through the interactive pre-sessions you held late last month, and also you organized successfully some side events to contribute to the discussions of the forum. So indeed, so the areas you focused, the SDGs you discussed. So there's really a core of the whether we will be able to achieve the SDGs, because there should be no one left behind, and there's no issue should be left aside from discussion, as well as addressing adequately to achieve the SDGs in this sub-region. Again, thank you very much. So we'll stay connected, and so we once again through you and through your our best wishes and to all the members of your network and your organizations. So now I open the floor for discussion. So any members, any participants who would like to take the floor, please go ahead, and any comments you would like to share with us, send us through chat box. So, and I'll invite any interested member of the groups, the stakeholders group, to come in now. Thank you. Can we see any? If no comments or if no one willing to come in for any issues, so I'd like then invite my colleague Ricardo Misiano from Environment and Development Division in ESCAP in Bangkok to briefly share the update on the Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development that will take place in 2021. Ricardo, now.
Sure, Gumball. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Many thanks, first of all, to you and your colleagues for organizing this successful forum. I've been attending the different session, and I noted with appreciation the different discussion and high quality of the presentation. Well done to you and all the participants who are still present today in our in this final session. Very briefly, I'd like to illustrate a little bit how the Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, the 8th of its nature, will look like next year. As you know, this is this sub-regional forum is in preparation to the regional forum, which actually is one of the regional forum in preparation of the high-level political forum in New York in July. The APFSD will be held next year from 22nd till 25th of March, and will be held in a hybrid modality. What does it mean? That for those government having a mission in Bangkok, the permanent representative will be present here at the UN Secretariat, and all our other participants, stakeholders, government representative will be connected online like you've been doing these days through another platform called Kudo. The main title and theme of the forum will be Sustainable and Resilient Recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic in Asia and the Pacific. The substantive focus of the forum will be on taking stock of the progress and discuss how the transformation can take place in the aftermath of the COVID-19. And then we will have an in-depth review of the SDGs that will be discussed at the high-level political forum next year. Which are these SDGs? 1, poverty reduction. 2, on food system. 3, on health. 8, on decent work. 10, inequality. 12, sustainable consumption production. 13, on climate change. 16, on peace and institutions. 17, on partnerships. And then we will also be discussing the voluntary national reviews. Countries that will be presenting next year, like Japan, China, DPRK, might play an important role. And then we will be looking at opportunities to strengthen this linkage between the national, regional, and global follow-up and review system. We will involve, of course, a big plethora of stakeholders, not only government, but also major groups, the UN development system, parliaments, business community. So pin down this new agenda, because we all will be invited to participate in the meeting. Why we will have an opening on the 22nd of March, and one session in the morning, one session in the afternoon. On the 23rd of March, we will all move online and have these online parallel roundtables discussing each individual goal under review, the one I just mentioned earlier on. And on 24, we will go back and discuss, in particular in the morning, the VNRs, and in the afternoon, the regional follow-up and review system. And we will conclude on the 25th of March with, in the morning, a high-level side event, and in the afternoon, the review and adoption of the report. The forum, as usual, will also be complemented by a series of side events. So if you have good ideas, you as your government or one of your major group or business community, and feel like organizing a side event, we will issue a call in the coming weeks, but please feel free to approach either us or the sub-regional office, and we will welcome side event linking to either the theme of the forum or one of the goals on the review. This is all from my side. If you have any question, please feel free to revert to any of us, but definitely put down on your agenda 22nd to 25th of March. Many thanks again, Gamble, for the opportunity, and very well done, and good luck to you for your following and behavior. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you for this important update. So certainly, so we will look forward providing our perspective and our recommendation and feedback from this our sub-regional forum for the preparation of our next APFSD that will take place in March, as just Ricardo informed us. So now this brings us to the close of this fourth Northeast Asia Multi-Stakeholder Forum on Sustainable Development Goals. So on this note, so I'd like to thank all the participants and all those who contributed and all those who supported this our sub-regional forum throughout 2020 and throughout these two days of discussions. And also I'd like to thank all our four moderators for their skillful steering the very important discussion and for their contribution. So in the closing, so let me share a few reflections of the forum as my closing statement. As expected, the challenges highlighted in the forum this year is a stark contrast to the last year's forum. The hard-won development gains in Northeast Asia have turned into priority concerns. The pandemic exposed and amplified many of the challenges which were sort of hidden behind the socioeconomic advancement in this sub-region. Existing challenges such as inequality have deepened while more people have fallen into the vulnerable groups. For instance, the sub-region has been considered as a front runner in achieving SDG Goal 1, poverty reduction, or Goal 2, zero hunger. ESCAP assessment of SDG progress suggested the region is also on the track in SDG Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. As clearly highlighted during this forum, the sub-region faces severe impact on employment, newly created vulnerable group, aggravating hardship of those left behind. And what is particularly significant in Northeast Asia is the heightened role of technology, both as the source and the solution for the widening inequality during the pandemic, for example. During the session, I heard participants illustrate various cases where digitization penalized the people who have limited access to technology. On the other hand, we also saw presentations on how technology has become the key instrument for the pandemic response, such as tracking the infection, providing education, commercial activities, and providing healthcare services to vulnerable and elderly. As the Executive Secretary highlighted in her remarks yesterday, Northeast Asia is a key source of innovation in technology. The sub-region should embrace the accelerating digitization, especially under these new circumstances, and also as we look for the better solution and build back better. But keep in mind that technologies should serve to improve the well-being of society, ensuring that no one left behind. Technology is not the only topic of the discussion during the forum, but I just highlighted it as an example from the sub-region where partnership and multi-stakeholder engagement is critical to navigating through pandemic towards the achievement of SDGs. On that note, I thank all the delegates, the speakers, participants for joining the forum, for your valuable insights and sharing your experiences and perspectives, how we, the subregion, better achieve and accelerate on the progress of implementation of SDGs. Thank you again, and stay safe and healthy. So I wish you a good day and good evening. Thank you, and bye-bye.